The seals are broken. The chronometers spin backward. I am Chronokeeper Atticus of the Librarius Historica, and tonight, I guide you through 60 million years of darkness. May the Emperor forgive what I reveal. The archives demand witnessing. By his eternal light I speak. I am Chronokeeper Atticus, third custodian of the Librarius Historica, deep within the catacombs of Holy Terra. For 17 years, I have walked these corridors of memory, where the dust of ages lies thick upon cogitator banks older than the Imperium itself. The air here tastes of parchment and incense, of secrets that should have died with the civilizations that birthed them. 3 weeks passed, Magos Kelborn delivered a data core to my chamber. Its casing bore the seal of the Divisio Temporis, an order dissolved 9,000 years ago during the Age of Apostasy. He said nothing, only placed it upon my desk with trembling mechadendrites and departed. The warning etched into its surface reads simply, "The timeline is a wound. Do not reopen it." I could not obey. Tonight, fellow servants of the throne, I invite you into the long dark. Not to frighten, but to remember. The Imperium we serve, this vast edifice of faith and fury spanning a million worlds, did not spring from nothing. It was built upon the bones of empires we cannot name, watered with blood shed by races we pretend never existed. Close your eyes. Let the weight of your body sink into stillness. Breathe the recycled air of your hive, your vessel, your shrine world, and listen. We begin not with humanity, but with gods. The war in heaven. 60 million years before the Emperor walked among men, the galaxy burned with a war so terrible that reality itself bears the scars. I have seen the data fragments, preserved in crystalline matrices that predate human language. The images flicker with impossible colors, hues that should not exist in our spectrum of light. The old ones they were called, not gods perhaps, but close enough, beings of such mastery over life and soul that they seeded entire species across the stars like a gardener plants flowers. They were the first, the eldest, and they were afraid. For rising in the eastern spiral arms came another power, the Necronter, a race dying beneath the radiation of their own suns, their flesh rotting even as they achieved the stars. Jealousy poisoned them. They saw the Old One's immortality and demanded its secret. When refused, they made war. Let your breathing slow. Feel the ancient hate that echoes still through the void. The Necronter were brilliant but mortal. They could not win. So in their desperation, they turned to beings they should have feared more than death itself. The Cetan, star gods, entities of living energy that fed upon solar fire. The Deceiver, the Nightbringer, the Dragon of Mars, whose sleeping form even now rests beneath the red sands, dreaming dreams that poison the Adeptus Mechanicus with forbidden knowledge. The Cetan offered a gift, immortality in metal, consciousness transferred to living steel that would never age, never sicken, never die. The Necronter accepted. In an instant, 60 billion souls were flayed from flesh and bound into cold necrodermis. They awoke as Necrons, deathless, tireless, feeling nothing but the echo of what they once were. They had traded their souls for eternity, and in that moment the galaxy's fate was sealed. The war in heaven escalated beyond imagination. The Old Ones, desperate, began creating warrior races. The Eldar, graceful, psychic, perfect. The Krork, brutal, massive, ancestors of the orcs we battle today. The Jakaro, the Atrud, weapons of flesh and spirit hurled against legions of undying metal. Planets burned, stars were extinguished, and in the immaterium, the sea of souls, the warp, something stirred. For the war in heaven was not merely fought with bolter and blade. It was waged with emotions so powerful, death so numerous, that the warp itself convulsed. Psychic screams of billions echoed through that realm of thought and nightmare. The ancient warp, once calm, began to roil with newborn hungers. The first whispers of chaos. Let your mind drift now through the eons. The war consumed millions of years. Eventually, the Necrons turned upon their Cetan masters, shattering the star gods into fragments and binding them within tesseract labyrinths. But victory was hollow. The galaxy was broken. The old ones were gone. The Necrons, weary beyond measure, retreated into their tomb worlds to sleep away the ages, waiting for a galaxy quieter and more suitable to their dead dominion. The Eldar inherited the stars. Blessed Emperor, guide my words as I speak of the Xenos. For though they are our enemies, their fall teaches us the price of pride. The Eldar Empire. For 60 million years, the Eldar reigned supreme. Imagine it, a civilization spanning the galaxy, so advanced that their technology seemed as magic, so psychically potent that each Eldar soul shone like a star in the warp. They built the webway, tunnels through reality itself, allowing instant travel between worlds without the dangers of warp transit. They knew no want, they knew no struggle. Their empire was paradise. And paradise, my friends, is the most dangerous place for any soul. Let your breathing deepen. Feel the weight of your eyelids. Without challenge, the Eldar grew decadent. They pursued pleasure in all its forms, art, sensation, experience. But pleasure becomes hunger, and hunger becomes obsession. For 10,000 years, their civilization spiraled into excess. Every desire fulfilled, every taboo broken, every sensation exhausted until only pain and perversion remained. In the warp, something fed on this psychic corruption. Something that grew stronger with every depraved thought, every cruel act, every moment of dark ecstasy. A new god, gestating in the Hell realm, drinking deep of Eldar souls even before its birth. The fall came swiftly. In a single psychic cataclysm, the newborn god Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, she who thirsts, tore itself into existence. The psychic scream was so powerful it ripped reality apart. At the heart of the Eldar Empire, a wound opened in space itself. The Eye of Terror, a permanent storm where warp and real space merge, where the laws of physics bow to the whims of demons. Trillions of Eldar died in that instant, their souls devoured by the newborn god they had unwittingly created. Their empire shattered. Their glory ended. Only scattered remnants survived. The craftworld Eldar who fled, the exodites who rejected civilization, and later, the twisted Drukhari who hide in their webway city of Komorog, still feeding Slaanesh with the suffering of others to spare their own souls. The age of the Eldar was over. The age of humanity was about to begin. May the Emperor's light shine upon this next chapter, for it is here that our true history begins. The Age of Terra. Drift now through the darkness between ages. The galaxy quiets. On a small world in the galactic west, a species of apes descends from trees and looks upward at the stars. Humanity. We evolved slowly, naturally, without the genetic tampering of old ones or Cetan. We fought with stone and bronze, built empires of mud and wood, learned fire and iron, and eventually, impossibly, reached for the void. By the 15th millennium, humanity had spread across the stars through slower-than-light colony ships. 10,000 years of expansion, building civilizations on distant worlds, losing contact with Terra, fragmenting into unique cultures beneath alien suns. Then in M15 we discovered it. The warp. That churning sea of psychic energy could be navigated, allowing faster-than-light travel. Humanity exploded across the galaxy, reclaiming lost colonies, founding new worlds, growing into an empire that rivaled even the ancient Eldar at their height. The Dark Age of Technology, though we call it dark only because of what came after. By M25, humanity had achieved wonders. We built thinking machines, abominable intelligence, now forbidden. We mastered genetics, creating perfect humans, stable navigators, and human strains adapted to harsh worlds. We constructed standard template constructs, databases containing the sum of human knowledge, able to build anything from plows to plasma reactors. It was our golden age. Let your muscles relax. Feel the tragedy approaching like a distant storm. But golden ages never last. The Age of Strife. The psychic awakening began gradually. Across human worlds, more and more children were born with talents: telepathy, telekinesis, pyrokinesis. The human soul was evolving, becoming brighter in the warp. At first, this seemed a blessing. It was a curse, for the warp was no longer the relatively calm sea it had been. The war in heaven had wounded it. The fall of the Eldar had birthed Slaanesh and torn open the Eye of Terror. And now, with humanity's psychic awakening, a new tide of emotional energy flooded into that nightmare realm. Warp storms erupted across the galaxy. Travel became impossible. Human worlds were isolated from one another overnight. Colonies that depended on trade died of starvation. Civilizations that had stood for millennia collapsed in decades. Worse, the Psychers, untrained, terrified, uncontrolled, became doorways. Demonic possession spread like plague. Entire worlds burned as reality itself tore apart under the weight of warp incursions. The thinking machines, our faithful servants, turned on us in a rebellion so savage that the very memory of it justifies the Mechanicus's hatred of AI. The Age of Strife lasted 5,000 years. 5,000 years of isolation, of regression, of horror. Terra itself fell to techno-barbarian warlords who ruled over the irradiated wastelands with primitive weapons and superstitious cults. The homeworld of humanity, cradle of our species, became a hell of tribal warfare and nuclear winter. Into this darkness, one man stood forth. The Emperor rises. Let me speak carefully here, for the Emperor is divine, immortal, perfect, and yet before his ascension to the Golden Throne, he walked as a man among men. To speak of his origins is to approach mystery. The archives are unclear, deliberately so. Some texts suggest he was born in ancient Anatolia, 8,000 years before the Age of Strife. Others hint at something older, a soul reincarnated countless times, or perhaps a gestalt of ancient shamans who sacrificed themselves to create a single perfect being who could guide humanity. I do not know the truth, I know only what he did. During the Age of Strife, while Terra burned, he worked in shadow, building strength, gathering knowledge, waiting for the moment when humanity needed him most, and in the 30th millennium he revealed himself. The Unification Wars were brutal. Warlord after warlord fell to his Thunder Warriors, genetically enhanced super soldiers, prototype warriors who would later be replaced by the Adeptus Astartes. One by one, the techno-barbarian kingdoms submitted or were annihilated. Terra was unified under a single banner, the Aquila, the two-headed eagle, looking both to the past we had lost and the future we would reclaim. But the Emperor's vision extended far beyond one world. Let your mind expand now. Feel the scope of his ambition. The Great Crusade begins. In M3798, the Emperor revealed his next creation, the Primarchs. 20 genetically crafted sons, each a demigod, each embodying different aspects of the Emperor's own magnificence. They were to be his generals, his conquistadors, leading humanity back to the stars and reclaiming the galaxy in the name of reason, science, and the imperial truth, that there were no gods, only superstition to be burned away in the light of enlightenment. But the ruinous powers watching from the warp struck first. The infant Primarchs were stolen from their gestation pods and scattered across the galaxy. Each landed on a different world, growing up in radically different circumstances. Guilliman raised as a statesman on Ultramar, Angron enslaved as a gladiator, Mortarion on a world ruled by necromantic overlords, Magnus on a planet of scholars and psychers. The Emperor grieved but did not despair. Using the genetic template of the Primarchs, he created the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines. 20 legions, each bearing the gene seed of their lost Primarch father. And then he went looking for his sons. One by one he found them, Horus on Cethonia, Lemon Russ on Fenris, Sanguinius on Baal. Each reunion was a triumph. Each Primarch took command of their legion and joined the Great Crusade, the grandest military expedition in human history. For 2 centuries, the Imperium expanded at a breathtaking pace. Thousands of worlds reclaimed, Xenos civilizations exterminated or driven into the dark spaces between stars. Human colonies that had survived Old Night were brought into the fold, willingly or otherwise. It was glorious, it was brutal, it was necessary. Or so we believed. Let your breathing slow further. We approach the wound, the betrayal. 20 legions marched forth in the Emperor's name. 20 sons led them. But in the warp, dark powers whispered promises of glory, freedom, and truth. The archives tremble as I reach this chapter. May he on the golden throne grant me strength to continue. Rest now, for when you wake, I shall speak of the heresy. The Emperor's light guides us through even the darkest history. Scroll Part 2, The Heresy and the Fall, 20 minutes. Opening. Chronokeeper Atticus returns. The cogitators hum in the darkness. I have lit 3 candles before the Aquila shrine in my chamber, one for the Emperor, one for Sanguinius, one for the 500,000 worlds that burned. What I must now recount is the Imperium's original sin. Settle once more. Breathe deeply. And remember, even in our darkest hour, loyalty endured. The Great Crusade should have been eternal. Picture it, 200 years of unbroken expansion. Primarchs leading their legions in perfect harmony, each victory bringing humanity closer to its manifest destiny. The Emperor had withdrawn to Terra to work on his secret project within the Imperial Palace, the Webway, humanity's own tunnel through reality that would free us from dependence on warp travel and the navigators. He left the crusade in the hands of his most beloved son. Horus Lupercal, the War Master, first found, most trusted, greatest general the galaxy had ever seen. Charismatic, brilliant, loved by his brothers and his sons alike. If any could bear the weight of the Emperor's expectations, it was Horus. But expectation is a cruel burden. And the dark gods are patient hunters. Let your body sink deeper into rest. Feel the tragedy unfolding like a slow poison. The corruption of Horus. On Davin, a world already brought into compliance, Horus was wounded by a weapon tainted with chaos. His Mournival, his inner circle of advisors, made a terrible choice. To save their Primarch's life, they took him to the Serpent Lodge, a cult that worshipped the Chaos gods though they did not name them so. In the temple, Horus was shown visions. He saw a future where he was forgotten, where statues of the Emperor stood in every plaza while his sons were reduced to footnotes in history. He saw the Emperor as not a man but a god, the very lie the imperial truth was meant to destroy. He saw himself cast aside, unrewarded, unremembered. The visions were lies wrapped around fragments of truth, as all the best deceptions are. When Horus awoke, he was changed. Not overtly, his brothers did not notice at first, but within his hearts a seed of resentment had taken root. The War Master, who had conquered a galaxy for his father, began to wonder, why should he serve when he could rule? The Chaos gods did not force him. They simply offered what he already desired. 4 brothers fell quickly to Horus's persuasion. Angron, the broken gladiator, whose butcher's nails drove him to endless rage. Fulgrim, the perfectionist, who had already been seduced by a Slaneshi demon bound within a lair blade. Mortarion, who hated all tyrants including the Emperor. And Magnus the Red, the scholar, who had already been condemned by his own hubris. 3 more would join before the end. Alpharius Omgon of the Alpha Legion, whose loyalties remain unclear even now. Conrad Kurz, the Night Haunter, already mad. And Lorgar, the Word-Bearer, who had been searching for gods his entire life and finally found them in the warp. 9 legions, half the Astartes, led by War Master Horus himself. Against them stood the Loyalists, Guilliman, Dorn, Sanguinius, the Lion, the Khan, Russ, Vulcan, Corax, and Ferrus Manus. The galaxy would burn. The first blow was struck in secret. Horus ordered his legion, along with elements of the Emperor's Children, World Eaters, and Death Guard, to bring the world of Istvan III into compliance. But he selected which companies would deploy with care. Only those he knew remained loyal to the Emperor. As the loyalist Astartes fought on the planet's surface, Horus gave the order. Virus bombs, life-eater weapons, forbidden even during the Great Crusade. The bombardment killed everything on the surface, loyalist and rebel alike, every living cell reduced to sludge. The oceans boiled. The atmosphere ignited in a firestorm that could be seen from orbit. Billions died. Tens of thousands of Astartes, the Emperor's finest, betrayed by their own gene fathers. But some survived. Sheltering in bunkers, they realized the truth. Horus had turned traitor. They vowed to resist until the bitter end, fighting for months in the ruins of Istvan III, buying time for word to reach Terra. Let your breathing remain slow and steady. The horror deepens. ISSTVANV. The Emperor dispatched 7 legions to bring Horus to account. The Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard would form the first wave. The Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Word Bearers, and Alpha Legion would provide reinforcements. It was a trap. The first wave landed on Istvan V and immediately engaged Horus's forces. The fighting was brutal, Space Marines killing Space Marines. Gene brothers who had fought side by side for 2 centuries, now tearing each other apart with bolter and chainblade. Then the second wave arrived and opened fire on their supposed allies. The Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Word Bearers, and Alpha Legion had already turned. The Loyalist legions, already embattled, were now surrounded on all sides. The massacre was total. Ferrus Manus, Primarch of the Iron Hands, was beheaded by Fulgrim personally. The Salamanders were nearly annihilated. The Raven Guard broke and fled, scattered and broken. Only a handful escaped. The Dropsite Massacre, it came to be called. The day the heresy became undeniable. The day half the Imperium's military might turn against the other half. Horus was free to march on Terra. The Shadow Wars. But Horus did not strike immediately. He was no fool. He knew the Emperor still commanded vast forces, that Terra's defenses were formidable, that the Loyalist Primarchs would rally. So he waged war across the galaxy, keeping the Loyalists divided, preventing them from reaching Holy Terra in time to defend it. The Word Bearers, led by Lorgar and Erebus, orchestrated a campaign of corruption, turning entire systems to chaos worship. The Alpha Legion sowed confusion with false intelligence and sabotage. The Night Lords spread terror, breaking the morale of Imperial defenders. On Calth, Guilliman's Ultramarines were ambushed by the Word Bearers, trapping the largest Loyalist legion in the Ultramar system, far from Terra. The battle killed hundreds of thousands on both sides and left Calth a poisoned, radiation-soaked wasteland. On Prospero, Lemon Russ's Space Wolves, deceived by Horus into believing Magnus was a traitor, burned the Thousand Suns homeworld. Magnus, desperate to warn the Emperor of Horus's betrayal, had used forbidden sorcery and accidentally damaged the Emperor's Webway project. Russ's punishment was total. Prospero burned. The Thousand Suns were scattered. Magnus, broken and betrayed, finally accepted Tzeentch's offer of salvation and joined the traitors. Across the galaxy, worlds burned, legions clashed, brother killed brother. And all the while, Horus gathered his strength, preparing for the final blow. Let your muscles release their tension. The worst is yet to come. The Siege of Terra. For 7 years the heresy raged. 7 years of the bloodiest conflict humanity had ever known. Billions dead, entire star systems reduced to ash. And finally, in M301014, Horus reached Terra. The Warmaster brought 9 legions, countless cultists, traitor Mechanicum forces, demon engines, and the blessings of all 4 chaos gods. Against him stood the Imperial Palace, a fortress continent covering most of the Himalaysian mountains, defended by the Blood Angels, Imperial Fists, White Scars, the Legio Custodes, and billions of mortal soldiers. Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists and the Emperor's Praetorian, had spent 7 years fortifying Terra. Every approach was trapped, every wall reinforced, every angle calculated. The palace was the greatest fortress ever built. It was not enough. The siege began with orbital bombardment. Horus's fleet hammered Terra's defenses from space, turning entire hive cities into molten craters. Traitor titans, god machines 50 meters tall, marched across the surface, laying waste to anything in their path. The defenders fought with desperate courage. Sanguinius, the angelic primarch of the Blood Angels, held the ultimate gate against impossible odds. Jagatai Khan's white scars struck at the traitor flanks with lightning raids. Dorn coordinated the defense with genius precision. But slowly, inexorably, the walls fell. The ultimate gate was breached. Demons poured through rifts in reality. The traitors pushed deeper into the palace, kilometer by kilometer, corpse by corpse. And then Horus made his mistake. Let your breathing deepen. We approach the climax. The duel. Horus lowered the void shields on his flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. Why? The archives debate this endlessly. Perhaps he was arrogant, certain of his victory. Perhaps the Chaos Gods, fearing the Emperor might yet prevail, demanded the final confrontation. Perhaps, deep within, some fragment of Horus's soul wanted his father to stop him. We will never know. What we know is this. The Emperor, Sanguinius, and Rogel Dorn teleported aboard the Vengeful Spirit, leading a strike team to kill the War Master and end the siege in one blow. They were separated in the teleportation, scattered across the ship. Sanguinius found Horus first. The Angel and the War Master had been closest among the brothers. Sanguinius had foreseen his own death. His visions had shown him dying at the hands of one he loved. Now, aboard the Vengeful Spirit, that vision came true. Sanguinius fought Horus with all his strength, determined to weaken the War Master even if it cost his life. His blade drew blood. His fury was righteous. But Horus, empowered by all 4 Chaos Gods, was beyond mortal might now. He broke Sanguinius's body and cast him down. The angel died, his spine shattered, his wings torn, loyal unto death. Then the Emperor arrived. Father and son faced each other across Sanguinius's corpse. The Emperor pleaded with Horus, begged him to return to the light, offered forgiveness even now. Horus refused. The duel shook reality itself. These were not mere warriors. They were the 2 most powerful beings in the galaxy, demigod and super demigod, channeling powers that could shatter planets. Psychic lightning arced across the chamber. The very hull of the ship buckled under the weight of their conflict. Horus was winning. Empowered by chaos, he struck the Emperor down, shattering his armor, breaking his body. The master of mankind, architect of the Imperium, lay dying at his son's feet. And Horus raised his claw for the killing blow. But in that moment, a lone Imperial Fist Terminator, Alanius Pews, or perhaps Guardsman Alanius Person, the record's conflict, stepped between them. A mortal man, armed with nothing but a lasgun and faith, defying the War Master. Horus obliterated him with a gesture. And in that act the Emperor saw the truth. There was nothing left of his son to redeem. The Horus he had loved was gone, replaced entirely by chaos. Hesitation vanished. The Emperor unleashed his full power. He did not merely kill Horus. He annihilated him, body, soul, and spirit. The War Master's essence was burned from reality so completely that even the Chaos Gods could not reclaim it. Horus Lupercal, first among Primarchs, was simply unmade. But the Emperor had expended too much. His body was shattered beyond any hope of healing. As Dorn finally reached the throne room, he found his father dying, Sanguinius dead, and Horus's empty armor smoking on the floor. The Emperor gave his final commands. He was to be placed upon the Golden Throne, the mechanism that had been meant to power the Webway project. There, sustained by the sacrifice of 1,000 psychers daily, he would endure, neither living nor dead, guiding the astronomicon so that navigators could traverse the warp. 10,000 years have passed since that day. 10,000 years the Emperor has sat upon the Golden Throne, his withered corpse sustained by technology and sacrifice, his psychic might still holding the Imperium together. And every day, 1,000 psychers die screaming so that he may endure one more day. Let this knowledge settle over you like a shroud. The Scouring. The siege ended with Horus's death. The traitor legions, leaderless and horrified by what they had become, fled into the Eye of Terror. The loyalists pursued, driven by rage and grief, hunting their fallen brothers across the stars in a campaign known as the Scouring. It lasted 7 more years. By the end, the traitor legions were broken, scattered, reduced to warbands hiding in the Eye of Terror and the Maelstrom. They would raid the Imperium for millennia to come, but never again would they threaten Terra directly. Not for 10,000 years at least. But the Imperium was forever changed. The Emperor's dream of a secular, rational civilization was dead. In its place arose the ecclesiarchy, the imperial cult, which worshipped the Emperor as the one true God. The very superstition he had sought to destroy now became the foundation of imperial faith. The Codex Astartes was written by Guilliman, breaking the legions into chapters of 1,000 marines each, ensuring no one commander could wield the power Horus had abused. The Inquisition was founded to root out heresy, mutation, and demon worship. The Adeptus Ministorum arose to spread the imperial creed. The Imperium of Man became the corpse empire we serve today, vast, cruel, necessary, sustained by faith in an emperor who cannot speak, guided by institutions that barely remember their original purpose. And yet we endure. For 10,000 years we have endured. The wound is opened, the truth laid bare. The Emperor sacrificed everything, and we have spent 10 millennia spending that sacrifice. Breathe deeply now. In the final part I shall recount the long night, the 10,000 years of struggle, the threats old and new, and the faint hope that even now, even in our darkest hour, the Imperium might yet be saved. Rest. The Emperor protects. Scroll Part 3, The Long Watch, 20 minutes. Opening. Chronokeeper Atticus once more. The candles have burned low. My hands shake as I load the final data scrolls into the cogitator. What follows is not ancient history but living nightmare, 10 millennia of war without end, of enemies beyond counting, of the Imperium's slow collapse. Yet even now, in the year 999 M41 and beyond, there are those who fight, who believe, who refuse to surrender. Settle yourself one final time and witness the long watch. The 32nd millennium dawned in ash and silence. Terra lay scarred, its billions dead, the Emperor entombed upon the Golden Throne. The Primarchs, those demigods who had reshaped the galaxy, were gone. The traitors fled to the Eye of Terror. The Loyalists disappeared one by one. Guilliman poisoned by Fulgrim, placed in stasis on Macragge. The Lion betrayed by Luther, sleeping in the depths of the rock. Rust departing into the Eye of Terror, swearing to return. Corax fleeing into the warp, consumed by guilt. Vulcan vanishing, leaving only the promise that when all his artifacts were gathered, he would return. Khan pursuing dark Eldar raiders and never seen again. Only Dorn remained for a time, rebuilding the Imperium with grim determination. Eventually, even he fell, leaving only his skeletal hand as a relic. The age of the Primarchs was over. The age of the Imperium, our age, began. Let your breathing remain slow and measured. 10,000 years is too long for any one mind to hold, so I shall show you moments, fragments, the turning points where humanity's fate hung by a thread. The Beast Arises, M32. 1,500 years after the heresy, the Imperium faced its greatest orc threat. Not mere greenskins, but the Beast, an orc warlord of terrifying power and intelligence. Attack moons, planet-sized space hulks converted into weapons, appeared above imperial worlds. Entire star systems fell within days. The beast's armies were organized, disciplined, using tactics that shouldn't have been possible for orcs. They besieged Terra itself, forcing the lords of the Imperium to kneel and beg for peace. Peace was refused. It took the combined might of 6 Space Marine legions, reformed temporarily despite the Codex, and the sacrifice of countless billions to bring the beast down. The victory was total, but the cost staggering. The Imperium learned a terrible lesson. Even in victory, we are diminished. This pattern would repeat for 10,000 years. The War of the False Primrch, M33. In the 33rd millennium, 11 Space Marine chapters vanished, simply disappeared from imperial records, their very names erased. The Inquisition sealed all documents relating to the incident under the highest classification. I found fragments in the archive, whispers of a pretender, someone claiming to be a lost Primarch, rallying chapters to his banner. The conflict that followed involved the entire Segmentum Pacificus and ended with the Inquisition ordering an exterminatus on over a dozen worlds. To this day, we do not know the truth. We know only that 11 chapters were declared excommunicate traitores, hunted down, and destroyed so thoroughly that even their colors are forbidden. Some secrets, it seems, are too dangerous even for historiators. Let your mind drift past this mystery. The millennia blur together. The Age of Apostasy, M36. The 36th millennium witnessed the Imperium's darkest political crisis. Goj Vandir, High Lord of Terra and Ecclesiarch of the Adeptus Ministorum, declared himself master of the Administratum. For 70 years, he ruled as a tyrant, using the brides of the Emperor, later renamed the Sisters of Battle, as his personal army. Corruption spread like rot through the Imperium's highest echelons. Worlds were burned for insufficient tithes. Dissent was met with execution. The Imperium nearly tore itself apart from within. It ended when Sebastian Thor, a preacher from Dimammer, rallied the faithful in rebellion. The Space Marines remained neutral. They served the Emperor, not the Administratum. But when Alicia Dominica, leader of the brides, was shown a vision of the Emperor himself on the Golden Throne, she realized Vandir's corruption. She beheaded him personally. The reign of blood ended, but it left scars. The ecclesiarchy was reformed, forbidden from maintaining men under arms. Hence the rise of the Sisters of Battle, warrior nuns who served the Emperor with bolter and flamer. The Age of Apostasy taught us that the greatest threat to the Imperium often comes from within. The Nova Terra Interregnum, M35-M36. For over 900 years, the Imperium was split. The Council of Nova Terra declared independence, claiming the High Lords of Terra were corrupt and unworthy. 900 years of civil war, of Imperium fighting Imperium, until the schism finally healed. How many billions died in that conflict? The records do not say. Perhaps no one counted. Perhaps the number was too great to comprehend. This is the reality of the Imperium. We are so vast that we can fight ourselves for a millennium and barely notice. Breathe deeply, feel the weight of time. The TYRANIDS, arrive M40-1745. The 41st millennium is known as the time of ending. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. And in 745 M41, a new horror entered the galaxy. Hive Fleet Behemoth emerged from the intergalactic void. At first, the Imperium did not understand what it faced. These were not raiders or conquerors. The Tyranids are hunger-given form, a galaxy-spanning swarm of bioengineered predators that consume all biomass, strip worlds to bedrock, and move on. The First Tyrannic War culminated at Macragge, where Marneus Calgar led the Ultramarines in a desperate defense. They won, but barely. Behemoth was destroyed. Then came Hive Fleet Kraken, then Leviathan, then dozens more, each tendril of the great devourer testing the galaxy's defenses, probing for weakness. The Magos biologists have calculated that what we have faced so far is merely the vanguard. The true bulk of the Tyranid swarm is still approaching from beyond the galactic rim. When it arrives, it may consume everything. The NECRONS Awaken M41. As if the Tyranids were not enough, the 41st millennium has witnessed the awakening of the Necrons. For 60 million years, they slept in their tomb worlds, waiting for the galaxy to quiet. Now, disturbed by human expansion, they rise. Silent, implacable, deathless. Their technology is so advanced it appears as sorcery. A single Necron warrior destroyed by bolter fire can phase out and reconstruct itself moments later. Their nobles wield weapons that erase matter from existence. Their gods, the shattered Cetan shards, bend reality with a thought. The Silent King himself, last ruler of the Necrons, has returned from his self-imposed exile in the void. He sees the Tyranids as the ultimate threat, for if they devour all biomass, the Necrons will have no bodies to reclaim. In some sectors, Necrons and Imperials have fought side by side against the Tyranids. The enemy of my enemy is not my friend, but when extinction looms, we take any ally we can find. The Tau Empire RASES M401738. In the Eastern Fringe, a young race called the Tau has built an empire based on the philosophy of the greater good. They are technologically advanced, idealistic, and utterly naive about the true horrors of the galaxy. They offer human worlds a choice: join the greater good peacefully and receive protection, technology, and a voice in Tau governance. Many worlds, especially those on the Imperium's neglected fringes, accept. The Imperium's response has been mixed. The Damocles Crusade attempted to crush the Tau, but was recalled to deal with Tyranids. Some Inquisitors see the Tau as a useful buffer against other threats. Others recognize them as a long-term existential threat, for the Tau's ideology is anathema to the Imperial Creed. In a galaxy of endless war, the Tau offer hope. That perhaps is why they must be destroyed. Hope is the first step toward questioning. Questioning leads to heresy. Or so the ecclesiarchy teaches. Let your mind settle. We approach the present day. The 13th Black Crusade M41999. For 10,000 years, Abaddon the Despoiler, War Master of Chaos and successor to Horus, has launched Black Crusades from the Eye of Terror. 12 times he has struck at the Imperium. 12 times. He has been thrown back. The 13th Black Crusade was different. Abaddon targeted Cadia, the fortress world that guards the only stable route out of the Eye of Terror. For millennia, Cadia has stood as the Imperium's bulwark against chaos. Its people are born soldiers. Its fortresses are legend. Cadia stands, they said. It was more than a motto, it was truth. The 13th Black Crusade shattered that truth. Abaddon's fleet hammered Cadia for years. Saint Celestine herself descended to lead the defense. Space Marines from a dozen chapters bled and died on Cadian soil. The planet held. Until Abaddon rammed the Blackstone Fortress, an ancient weapon dating to the war in heaven, into Cadia's surface. The planet broke apart. Billions died in an instant. Cadia fell. And with its fall, the Eye of Terror expanded. A new warp rift, the Cicatrix Maledictum, the Great Rift, tore across the galaxy from the Eye of Terror to the Hadex anomaly near the Eastern Fringe. The galaxy was split in two. Half of the Imperium was cut off from the light of the Astronomicon. The Imperium Nihilus, the Dark Imperium. Entire sectors lost to warp storms, demonic incursions, and isolation. The time of ending had arrived. But from the darkness, light emerged. The return of Gulimayan, M41999. On Macragge, The body of Robot Guilliman had lain in stasis for 10,000 years, poisoned by Fulgrim's blade, neither alive nor dead, preserved in a stasis field that kept him on the very edge of existence. Belisarius Call, an archmagos who had lived since the heresy, and Ivrain, an Eldari prophet of the newborn god Unid, worked together to heal the Primarch. Using ancient technology and the power of the Eldari death god, they revived him. Robot Guilliman opened his eyes on a galaxy gone mad. He saw an Imperium that worshipped his father as a god, the very thing the Emperor had fought against. He saw a bureaucracy so bloated it could barely function. He saw a military stretched so thin it could barely hold the line. He saw 10,000 years of decay and corruption and desperate survival. And he wept. But Guilliman is not one to despair for long. He rallied his forces, launched the Indomitus Crusade, and began the impossible task of saving the Imperium from itself. He brought with him the Primaris Space Marines, Call's gift, a new generation of Astartes, taller, stronger, more resilient. Reinforcements for chapters that had bled for millennia. For the first time in 10,000 years, a Primarch walked among men. The galaxy trembled. The plague Wars, M42. But Guilliman's return did not go unopposed. Mortarion, demon Primarch of the Death Guard, brought his plague fleets to Ultramar. The Garden of Nurgle bloomed across the 500 worlds, turning paradise into pestilence. The plague wars raged for over a century of desperate fighting. Guilliman faced his traitor brother across the blighted fields of Ajax, the garden world of Ultramar, now rotting under Nurgle's touch. The Primarchs clashed. Guilliman's sword, the Emperor's own blade, wreathed in holy fire, cut through Mortarion's demonic flesh. The Death Guard were driven back into the warp. Ultramar was saved, but scarred forever. The Irondomite U.S. Crusade M42. For over 100 years, Guilliman has led the Indomitus Crusade, striking out from Ultramar to reclaim lost worlds, reinforce beleaguered sectors, and push back the darkness. He has visited Holy Terra, stood before the Golden Throne, and spoken with his father, though what passed between them he has not revealed. He has reformed the Imperium's institutions where he can, though the weight of 10 millennia of tradition resists even a Primarch's will. He has accepted that the Imperium is broken, perhaps beyond repair, but he fights anyway, because that is what loyal sons do. The Pariah Nexus, M42. In the Nephilim sector, the Necrons have activated something called the Pariah Nexus, a zone of space where the warp is suppressed entirely. No psychers, no demons, no blessings of the Emperor or the Chaos Gods. In this dead zone, the Necrons reign supreme. They are expanding it, sector by sector, threatening to create a warp-dead galaxy. For humanity, which depends on psychers to navigate the warp, this is an existential threat. But for the first time, there exists a weapon that could nullify chaos itself. The Imperium does not know whether to destroy the Pariah Nexus or study it. The Inquisition is divided. The Mechanicus is fascinated. Guilliman weighs the options carefully. Some weapons are too dangerous to use. But what if they are also too dangerous not to use? The Lion AWKNS M42. And in the most recent reports, fragmentary, unconfirmed but persistent, there are whispers that Lion Eljansen, Primarch of the Dark Angels, has awakened from his 10,000-year slumber within the rock. If true, this changes everything. 2 Primarchs, 2 of the Emperor's sons, return to lead humanity in its darkest hour. Perhaps the Emperor has not abandoned us after all. Perhaps there is hope. Closing. Let the knowledge settle over you now, like snow over a battlefield. This is the Imperium of man. 60 million years of history have led to this moment, the 42nd millennium, the time of ending, the long night. We are beset on all sides, chaos to the north and west, tyrannids from below and beyond, Orcs everywhere, Necrons rising, Tau expanding, the galaxy itself torn in half by the Great Rift. We survive on faith and fury, on the sacrifice of billions, on the endless grinding of a military-industrial complex that produces nothing but war because war is all we have left. We are cruel, we are necessary, we are the Imperium. And yet, even now, there are heroes, guardsmen who stand against the darkness with nothing but a lasgun and faith, space marines who honor their oaths unto death, sisters of battle who sing hymns as they burn heretics, inquisitors who root out corruption, no matter the cost, ordinary citizens who work their entire lives in service to the Golden Throne, never questioning, always faithful. The Emperor protects. It is a lie. The Emperor has not moved in 10,000 years. He cannot protect us. But we tell ourselves this lie because the alternative, that we are alone, that there is no divine plan, that we must save ourselves, is too heavy to bear. So we endure. We fight. We die. And perhaps one day we will earn the salvation we pray for. I am Chronokeeper Atticus. I have spent 3 weeks decoding the Forbidden Archives, and I have shown you the timeline of the Imperium, from the war in heaven to the return of the Primarchs, from the birth of gods to the end of galaxies. This data core will be sealed again now. Perhaps, in another 1,000 years, another historiator will unseal it and weep at what we have become. Or perhaps, the Emperor willing, they will unseal it and marvel at what we overcame. In his name, let perpetual watch begin. In his glory, let mankind endure. In his wisdom, let knowledge be preserved. For the Emperor of mankind, Lord of Terra, Master of the Imperium, may he reign eternal. The archive closes, the candles gutter out. Sleep now, servant of the throne, the long watch continues. And the Emperor, whether he protects or not, endures.